Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Lance. And on behalf of the Producers Guild of America, I'd like to welcome everyone to our panel on world building and storytelling in VR. This panel is part of our Meet the Innovators series, where we're featuring the PGA's Innovation Award nominees from 2021. I serve on the PGA's New Media Council. And to tell you a bit more about the New Media Council and the Innovation Award, I'd like to introduce you to Jenny Ogden, Chair of the New Media Council and Co-Chair of the 2021 Innovation Award. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you, Ed, and welcome everybody. I'm very excited about the Innovation Award. It's the Producers Guild's most recent new award, and this year was our second annual. So it's something that the New Media Council and the Producers Guild is very proud of. And we do recognize producers across all of these interactive and immersive categories, special venue, all of the innovative categories that the award recognizes, is also recognized as credits towards membership in the guild. So if you're a producer working in any of these formats that are joining us tonight that isn't currently in the New Media Council, I'd like to invite you to apply for membership. It's a great place for forever relationships and educational events. And at that, I will hand it over to John Canning, who is our fabulous moderator tonight.
Why, thank you. Gee, fabulous moderator. I love that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening. Three great projects and even more great people presenting those projects this evening. It is my privilege and honor to kick us off and take us through the evening. Don't worry, we're going to have each one of the teams present their projects. And then at the end, we'll go into Q&A and a conversation, and hopefully you'll come up with some pithy questions by then. Otherwise, you'll be forced for me to come up with them. So send in your questions, send in your comments. But we're going to start off this evening with Ricardo Laganaro, the Chief Storytelling Officer of BRCbr Immersive Experience, and he's going to be talking about The Line. Take it away, sir.
Thank you very much, John. Good pronunciation of my name. Thank you. And yeah, so I am Ricardo Laganaro. I will start my presentation so you guys can see my screen instead of my not so beautiful face. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Can someone just answer me so I can?
Well, yes, we can.
Thank you very much. So as John said, I am partner and chief storytelling officer at Brcbr. We are an immersive studio based here in São Paulo, Brazil. We also have offices in LA and some small operations in Amsterdam, Netherlands. And I started working with immersive content when I was still working for O2 Films, the biggest production company here in Brazil, the company that made City of God, owned by Fernando Meirelles, who directed these beautiful pieces. I had the blessing opportunity of working in some of them. And there in 2013, I was invited to direct a dome for this building that was the biggest venue for the Olympics in Rio 2016. It's the Museum of Tomorrow, and then we have there this big dome, the big 360 dome, where you have to explain the story of the universe in 8 minutes. It's still there, it's still working, it's very beautiful. And then since then, I began to research immersive storytelling. There I did 12 cinematic pieces, and the last one that I did was already a partnership with Oculus. Oculus is the Facebook arm for virtual reality. And there I did this documentary in virtual reality inside maximum security prisons in the US. 2017, we were selected for Tribeca. It was the first time Facebook had a project like that in a film festival. And there, because of it, I was invited to become a partner in this company, Onboarding, here in Brazil. And after a couple of years, tried to make the company start, because making a tech startup is not easy, and in Brazil it's even a little bit harder. And in the end of 2018, we began to create this project called The Line. It's an embodied narrative, interactive narrative. I'll explain a little bit later why we call it embodied narrative. We had the premiere at Venice Film Festival. They have a beautiful track for VR there. There we had the blast of winning the Best VR Experience Award. Then because of it, we did another partnership with Oculus to make the home version for the line. And they were launching this new technology, the hand tracking, where you can interact with the experience using your own hand, throwing the controllers away. And then we were one of the 4 global launch titles for this technology with the line. And because of it, we submitted it for the Primetime Emmy Award. And then we were also awarded with Outstanding Innovation for Interactive Programming with this home use version. And then to finish this beautiful career, we are also had the honor of being a finalist of the PGA Finalist Award, Innovation Award, sorry. So I will put a small video clip, a small trailer to show you guys a little bit of the experience for the ones that don't know about it. And then I'll talk a little bit more.
Have you ever felt like you were living in a ceaseless repetition? In a world of miniatures, routine is everything. Everything is just the same, just like it has always been. Until it's not. Have you ever felt like you were living in a ceaseless repetition?
So for creating this piece, we had 3 main premises. And the first one in the beginning was to create a story that was tailored for VR. We had to have an IP that was created for this medium. And by saying that, we think that being native to VR is when you explore the environment and using this new way of storytelling that we call spatial storytelling. And also when you have meaningful interactions. Not as a game necessarily, you don't have to win nothing, you don't have to be skillful, but having interaction that you make the experience answer you somehow and creating emotions because of it. Sorry about the noise of the street. I hope it's not so loud here. Then the second premise was the user use the user's body to unfold the story. Because working with flat films for like 15 years, I realized that I never had to think about my body as a creator and the spectator's body to enjoy the piece, to watch a film. And when you're talking in VR, talking about VR, the first thing is the body. Are you seated? Are you standing up? Are you going to move around? Are you going to stay still? And then we realized that we could use the body as a tool to create emotions in different ways when you're talking about the story. And by doing that, we thought that this could be a very nice gateway to VR because VR is a very new art form. It's growing, but a lot of people still think that VR is just for gamers or for people into high tech and gadgets and devices like that. And we know that VR is not just that. VR is a new art form, and everybody can enjoy and relate to that if it tries the right experience for it. So we create a fable. It's a simple and beautiful love story that everybody can relate to, but has deeper levels of understanding that will feel with your own body interacting with that. And most of people probably never tried something like that before. to finish the presentation, I'll have a quick video, 1 minute video, with a good friend of mine that was Narrator, Rodrigo Santoro. You may know him from Westworld or classics like Love Actually. And he'll also talk a little bit what he felt when he was doing this, and give you guys a little bit of context so we can discuss later.
It's the first time I had an immersive experience like that. You know, in a movie, you're from the outside. Here, it's almost like I was with them. I was part of it. I had to narrate what was going on, but also I got involved with it. So it's, I think that's the biggest difference, instead of just being somebody who's watching something. Not so long ago, we kept memories in photo albums, remember? It's an experience where there's no barriers. You're just in it, and it makes you feel that you were part of it. There's a moment towards the end of the film where something happened that when I was watching it, it did something to my body, and I felt the emotion, but it wasn't only the emotion. It was the emotion combined with a body response. I'm just intrigued. I guess I'm just intrigued. I just want to learn more about it because it did something to me that wasn't expected. Wow. Next time, it will be your turn, okay? I'm really happy to be a part of this project because I really love what it talks about. Like there's this one line that says, happy are those who are on the right track. That's kind of like, you know, even the title of the film says it all. What is the right track? Where is the right track? And this is constantly questioned throughout the experience. So in a way, what BRCvr is doing here is bringing, you know, something from Brazil, generated in Brazil, narrated by a Brazilian, created by a Brazilian, but the story is universal. It's a love story. So I think that's beautiful.
So that's it, my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we can talk later about the piece.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ricardo. Lovely piece and brilliant, brilliant. Next up, we have Braden Roy, co-founder of Ferryman Collective. And I am going to attempt to get this out in something that sounds more than a cough. Krampusnacht. How'd I do? Gee, I was practicing with the mute on there. Braden, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Hi, my name is Braden Roy. I'm one of the co-founders of Ferryman Collective, a group of people who came together in September of this past year to create live performance theater in VR with live actors and focus on narrative. Our first project back then was kind of an experiment. Since it was September, Halloween was just around the corner, and Halloween was basically canceled for everyone. So we spun something up real quick just as a test to see if we could do it, and we made Para. Now, Para was kind of just a test run, right? But we thought we would take it one step further, and we decided on doing Krampusnacht. My associate, Brian Tull, he is a big fan of Krampus. In fact, his username online is typically Krampus, and he had in his mind a few different ideas about what we could do. And it was essentially just some core imagery to kind of hang a story on. He wanted it to be night. There was a cabin, and in it you find this old man who will read you a story. And during that story, a book would come out and become large and open up, and you would actually be able to step into the story. There you would find a village just having been ravaged, and ultimately you return and find the kind old man is now gone, and instead it's a ransacked cabin and some bloody hoof prints leading in the snow to a cave. So that's technically a story, but there was no plot there. So I took that and I wanted to focus on themes of self-love and acceptance, as well as the other side of that coin of not loving thyself and That's the harm and trauma that you can cause to yourself and others when you reject that part of yourself, and how that can be cyclical in nature. So with those pieces that we had, we decided to do an origin story, but we also wanted it to be a finale so we could emphasize the cause and effect that the choices that we make regarding how we view ourselves and how we view ourselves affects others, ripples out over time and affects everyone. But first, we needed to establish the lore. Krampus, if you're not familiar, is a European Christmas demon, for lack of a simpler explanation, and St. Nicholas is likewise both a mythical figure and a historical figure. So with them having been floating around in the zeitgeist for centuries, we started doing a research, how did Krampus and St. Nicholas come to be? Both the historical facts, where they exist, and the mythology. What's their relationship? What function do they serve culturally? How do they coexist? And it turns out that there's very few concrete concepts which are universally considered canon for either figure. Even Nicholas, who, as stated before, is a historical figure. Each region has their own specific twist on the folklore, and sometimes it diverges wildly. And because of that, because very little is agreed upon with that mythology, and facts having been muddled over time in the case of Nicholas, we created our own mythology, our own lore, which the short version, which is still kind of long, is that Nicholas, this kind young man with a streak of altruism, is eventually heralded as something of a saint by the people around him after he gets caught, giving people gifts despite his attempts at secrecy and anonymity. And he struggles to accept their praise and instead focuses on certain aspects of himself, which he's ashamed of, whether that's right or wrong for him to do. And as he sees it, he has a darkness in his heart. So he travels the world to find a way to rid himself of this darkness, and ultimately finds himself in the Austrian Alps. There he finds a cave with some ancient runes that he believes will allow him to will away his darkness into another object. And he finds a birch seed nearby, and in doing this ritual to try to move the darkness in his heart away, inadvertently seals his entire metaphorical heart with it. And, having lost the very thing that makes him human in the process. Well, time goes by, and the gap left by Nicholas's heart fills with a light of sort, but likewise the seed and the darkness within grow, and what we're left with is this gnarled old birch tree. But Nicholas, he finally deemed himself worthy of being called a saint, but at the cost of his humanity. He takes up rewarding all the good children with gifts in secret, but how does he go about judging so many? I mean, it's an entire planet. So he ultimately returns to the birch tree, and with it, he crafts a scale imbued with both the light that had gathered within him and the darkness that had gathered there. And he created something that would be able to judge everyone, whether that's right or wrong, whatever. But in doing so, he also releases what had been stored in there for all those decades. And Krampus appears, just this embodiment of everything that had been sealed away as this bestial horned figure. And Nicholas sees him and immediately assumes it's a demon. He judges Krampus to be a demon, doesn't give him time of day to make a case for himself, and he binds him in shackles made of this holy light that is now within him. From there, they take over and start using the scale. But whereas Nicholas is rewarding the children, he has Krampus tasked with punishing the naughty ones. This goes on for a while, and eventually Krampus breaks free, and he rampages and destroys a few villages, and ultimately St. Nicholas steps in with the scale that he originally used to trap Krampus and uses it once again to trap him once more. And he travels back to where it first started, the cave that he found in the Alps. And he seals away the scale there and proceeds to live a life of solitude from then on out. Now, that's where the audience comes in. That's all backstory. I'm sorry you had to listen to it. It's kind of boring. But ultimately, art, regardless of format or medium, is at its core a conversation between the creator and those experiencing it. We can only take this so far without introducing the audience element when you're working with live actors and a live audience. Now, traditionally, this conversation between artist and viewer is inherently asynchronous. As an example, most readers won't see a book until months or years after it was written. Where our production differ here is that we're all in direct conversation with our audience. The cast and crew are there with them in real time, with the audience themselves playing a role in the narrative. While we may guide them and lay out the structure, this is at its core a type of collaborative storytelling, with the audience going through writing their own story of their own, both with us and their fellow guests. Now, you may have just broken into a bit of a cold sweat with the implications of writing for every conceivable thing an audience might do. But as you'd expect, that's impossible. While we do have different dialogue and prepared responses for our cast to use for a variety of actions, we could reasonably expect the audience to take or things they might say. It's honestly somewhat minimal compared to what you might think. The trick is gently guiding the audience's hand in the direction that you want them to go without them being aware of it. It's not dissimilar from a magic act, honestly. You know, you have your prestige and whatnot. So how do you go about doing that? It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all type scenario, but in general, we found that the following works pretty well for this format. First, plan with your audience in mind. Before you even set pen to paper or finger to keyboard, try to establish how many audience members you'd like to have in each showing and how active or passive a role you'd like them to have. Once you have that down, you'll want to start planning hero moments, where one or more audience members are raised to a higher level of visibility or set up to take big actions or deeper interactions. They want to be invested in the narrative, and this allows them to feel a sense of ownership. From here, they're not only going to be more energized having taken part directly in that way, but also more likely to pick up on cues because they'll be that much more invested in what's happening and what the actors are doing and how they're being directed. And the same is true for smaller moments. You need to plan for those as well, though in a less direct way. Give them something to hold, a task, something that they can interact with, which will draw them further into the world and less likely to have them diverge too far off course. And then as well, you got to make sure that each and every audience member feels seen. Interacting with each in every way you can, whenever you can. I mean, you see people talk about bank robbers and how they're less likely to rob a bank if they have someone greeting them as soon as they come in because they felt seen. Now, obviously, most of our audience members are not criminals as far as we know, but it's still the same principle is in effect. And them being seen not only makes them feel like it's a part of the experience, but they also know that they're being watched and less likely to go out of their way to act maliciously. Now, granted, most go into the experience not wanting to cause anything bad, so that's not too much of an issue, but it still helps ground them. And then also when you're writing your script, you got to make sure to write any dialogue prompts in a way that they could only really be logically answered in a select number of ways so that you can kind of prepare for the answer based on the information that you've provided to them previously, be it something that was said, something that they read ahead of time in onboarding, or features of the environment, objects around. You can have full control of that, and because of that, you can generally plan ahead on what the audience will say and how they'll respond at given prompts. Now, those tips are all directly related to writing and directing and performing. But there are two other extremely effective arrows in our quiver this time around: world and audio design. Now, when you're building a space, world, or environment, you're also establishing a sense of place and presence, sort of a handhold for the audience to grab on and keep themselves grounded. For the work we do, it exists very much at the intersection of the design principles from theater, film, and gaming. Lighting, dimension, set dressing, these are all a core part of what it is, as is usually the case. The divergence here is a greater focus on establishing sight lines so that the audience will naturally be drawn to the things we want their attention on and away from the things we don't. Now, working with our actors on blocking is an important part of this, as anything, of course, but having space designed properly can both guide an experience by itself as well as impart large chunks of the story. And then, of course, with audio, the use of ambient audio cannot be understated. It's ultimately a subtle thing, usually, but it can ground a person in ways that other sensory information just can't. A bit of wind, the crackle of fire, they help to build the world in the audience member's mind and fill in the gaps which otherwise throw them off. Similar to the way we use different landmarks and shiny things to draw their attention with our world design, spatialized audio helps tremendously in not only maintaining the audience's level of immersion and attention, but also helps guide them where they should be, where to look, and ultimately be where the story needs them to be and where we need to take them. At its core, though, immersive VR theater is as much about world building and storytelling on our end as it is about giving our audience members the tools that they need to build these worlds up within their minds, to create these stories alongside us and their fellow guests. And the most important thing we can do as storytellers is to lay the groundwork, guide them, and say yes and. With that, I'd just like to thank you all for having me along. It's been a pleasure. And also our most recent production, Severance Theory, Welcome to Respite, just had its premiere at Tribeca and is currently open, and there are tickets, so check it out if you want. They're free. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Braden. I've decided that my next audiobook, I'm going to have you narrate. As you were telling me the story of Krampus, I've just decided that's what I'm going to have you do. And good news is your partner in crime, Brian, joined us, but said, no, he's fine. Let him go.
He did a wonderful job. I don't think I could have done any better. I just let him go. He did much better than I could have done, I'm sure.
Perfect. And Brian will be joining us for Q&A. So fantastic. Moving on to last but not least, and winner of the Innovation Award, we have Athena and Doug from Big Rock Creative presenting BRCvr.
Hello.
I struggle with all of the letters when I add these things together. All right. Take us home into the Q&A. And I just want to a public service announcement, folks. Do remember, you can start dropping questions now. We will be taking through them. If something's, right down there. In the chat. The universal in the chat. Or, depends on what it is. All right, you two.
You're muted in the chat.
In the chat.
You're muted.
I'm tired of looking at you.
We have all these like Zoom lingo now.
Right.
So fun.
Okay.
BRCvr,
please. For the love of God, take it away.
Okay.
BRCvr stands for Black Rock City VR. Black Rock City is the name of the city that Burning Man takes place in for that 1 week a year. It also riffs on Big Rock Creative VR, so it's kind of a double meaning there. Athena?
Yeah, we decided to make the name of our company seriously confusing with the name of our project, but it is a double entendre. And BRCvr, Black Rock City Virtual Reality, is an official virtual Burning Man experience. And Burning Man has been at the forefront of experiential storytelling for 35 years. And so for us to bring it into the virtual is a continuation of that storytelling.
Yeah, so we have a short video that we can play that kind of gives you an overview of everything that sort of a little bit of, sort of what we went through. And we'll talk to you more on the other side of the video. So why don't you roll sound? Let's get it.
Due to the global pandemic, many beloved events were canceled and fearful communities were ordered into social isolation. Big Rock Creative came into existence tasked with creating one of the most popular community-driven events in the world, Burning Man, by creating the BRCvr experience, a virtual version of Burning Man for the canceled Burn Week of 2020, providing the burner community a place to flourish creatively in virtual reality. The challenge was to invent the process for bringing artists from building things in the real world into a virtual one. No one had ever done anything like this before in VR. We invented a process to democratize virtual building, bringing completely non-technology-based participants onto the platform. First, a virtual version of the main event space was created to give participants a sense of normalcy to welcome them home. This first virtual playa was used to give tours and train users. Next, we created a toolkit that gave artists with no 3D modeling skills the power to build art, a world in VR, while also providing a unified aesthetic to the BRCvr experience. Using instructional videos, Discord servers, and social media, we networked the global artist community together to help each other. Art that otherwise would never have been experienced because it could not be built was showcased in BRCvr, and art that had burned in previous years could now be shared and enjoyed once again. And a community built on the principles of radical inclusivity, participation, and communal effort felt included, empowered to participate, and worked together to create pure, wondrous magic. With over 90,000 joins during Burn Week, BRCvr fostered the creation of over 200 worlds. The building world was only the beginning. We educated them on how to engage their community in a compelling way by hosting their own events, helping bands, DJs, speakers, workshops, and tours use these environments to entertain and engage their audiences by organizing over 1,500 hours of programming. The Burning Man event has always been the proving ground for new developments in cutting-edge technology. BRCvr showcased exciting innovations in VR and AR technology and pushed the platform to its limits. The socially isolated are now social butterflies. Year one, with only 2 months lead time for planning, was a huge success. The world celebrated BRCvr through articles in over 35 publications, including Wired, Mashable, Fast Company, and Forbes. We won several awards, including the prestigious Producers Guild Award for Innovation, the Aurea Award for Creativity, and the No Proscenium Audience Choice Award for Best VR Experience of 2020. Since Burn Week, BRCvr has hosted several events, entertaining thousands of people and bringing new people into the VR space. We saw our user base expand during our New Year's weekend celebration. For 2021, we are perfecting the systems we created to bring 5 times the world, 5 times the programming, and 5 times the community together in an engaging and compelling way. Big Rock Creative brings global communities together through immersive social virtual reality. We build engaging environments where your organization and brand communities thrive.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, it was fun. So when you peel back all the model building and all the worlds and everything, what Burning Man also has that's really great that wasn't really present as much in this video is that they have a lot of sort of street theater, a lot of nonlinear experiential storytelling. And anyone who's gone to Burning Man or any similar event can tell you they had random interactions and spontaneous narratives happening. So can you guys hear me okay? The question, I'm sorry, there's stuff going on here. The question we have is, can we make real world experiences, convert that into a virtual world? For example, let me give you one. Every year at Burning Man, they have something called the Billion Bunny March, and this is a spontaneous live theater. They have people wearing bunny hats and marching to the man, and there's thousands and thousands of people, and then there's the carrot people who are anti-bunny, and then they battle, and then there's the the animal control comes and tries to capture bunnies. It's a large scale mass improv theater, and in order to capture that, we tried to do that in BRCvr. So what we did was we actually tried to do a Billion Bunny March in BRCvr. So we rendered these bunny ears and carrots, and we actually had Stephen Raspa, who runs it, come in, and we did a Billion Bunny March to the man, and we did the event. It was messy and it was hilarious, and but that nonlinear experiential storytelling that we want to do more and more of this year, and bring that kind of like, I came across this random thing, and these people from over here and this other group all started a spontaneous immersive theater, and that's something we're definitely planning on doing more of in year 2. And we did have some of, and that is one of the more difficult things to capture in our virtual reality environment. Athena?
Yeah, so more and more of that is going to happen this year. The experiential storytelling, where the participant, the ticket holder, is part of that storytelling, that they aren't an audience member, but a participant. It's one of the principles of Burning Man. The other thing we're really excited about BRCvr for, there are a lot of letters in that, is that it also allows for a form of introduction into the Burning Man culture, as well as nostalgia, maintaining the nostalgia. Sometimes people call it archival, but it's so different that it's not an archive. But being able to experience all the men, and that they're all there, all the man being the big man that burns. Every year he's a little different. And when he's gone, he's gone. But not so much in BRCvr. Now you can go visit the man from your first year, which a lot of burners love doing, is finding the man that's from their first year and showing it to other people. So it becomes this shared experience, and that becomes part of the storytelling. And then in introducing people to the culture, we have different worlds that are examples of various principles. There's the 10 principles of Burning Man, and which I also am able to lead discussions about them the first Saturday of every month in BRCvr. And we're also not just 1 week out of the year or one event. We're year round with stuff going on every week that people can participate in and get involved with. Yeah,
so there's multiple layers of storytelling that we're sort of experimenting with, sort of taking us back to the past and telling the stories of stuff that was there in the past, giving people a story about what the new piece of art and the story behind that piece of art, and also telling the story of Burning Man itself within the event. And I think in virtual reality, this is a really powerful tool for bringing all those things together for not just Burning Man, but all kinds of events that would really flourish with these elements put into place. So really love it. So
yeah, it's a great opportunity to log your mythology. Every culture, every community has a mythology that is the foundation of that culture, and doing that level of storytelling in VR, which is showing the important pieces of art, the things that have, in Burning Man's standing, things that have burned in the past, and the Billion Bunny March, and the Lamplighters, and the Rangers. They're all part of the mythology. They're all part of that community of people that build the city every year. And now we have that city that we can go to that we love so much right at our fingertips.
There you go. Back to you, Ed. Or John.
Oh, it's back to me.
You,
back to
John.
me. I'm come full circle.
John is, yes. Oh my God, that's your new playa name. You're come full circle.
I'm come full circle.
Just
Come
call
full
full
circle.
circle. It's got to be an abbreviated full circle.
Okay, that's fine. And I'm sure there's going to be an acronym too. If I can get all the panelists to come back into the mosh pit of fun, I will say that I flippantly answered a question for the BRCvr people because somebody posing as Dane Smith asked the question and said that they weren't Dane Smith, which I had to point out to him on the internet. No one knows you're not Dane Smith, so you didn't. Anyway, and they had asked, are you guys planning to do any other kinds of events with BRCvr?
BRC.
Yeah.
Black Rock City. That's the city where Burning Man happens. Black Rock
Yes,
City.
I'm just
BRC.
gonna black. Yeah, but I'm not
VR.
smart enough. because
It's okay. We have people on our team that still can't say it. You know, our head of marketing at one point in time just kept getting the letters mixed up. So it's totally fine.
BRC. No.
Yes. BRCCBR.
BRCCR. VR.
Right. Sort of a Creedence Clearwater Revival.
I also just forgot the question.
Okay, the question was, are you guys planning on doing any other large-scale events with your platform?
We actually have done some, not as big as Burning Man, but we have done some large scale events, but for private clients. So we've had people hire us to do their corporate gathering or their party or rebuild their building or something along those lines. So, but not like a big major festival like Burning Man. That is the largest in that regard.
And those are not Burning Man related. They're completely unrelated to the Burning Man has 10 principles and sort of is in its own sort of bubble over here that we is very specific on what we can and can't do with that outside of the event. So
makes sense.
But we do BRCvr events year round. We have a party every other Friday. We have an event coming up actually this Friday, showcasing the haloportation technology for an artist by the name of Hallie Gregg, and that's on Friday, right? It's on the 18th? On Friday. It's on Friday the 18th in Altspace as part of BRCvr and Playa Alchemist, which is one of the Burning Man theme camps. And we're hosting this. So it's not just Burn Week. Burn Week is the end of August, beginning of September. This year it's August 29th through September 7th. And when you purchase your ticket for BRCvr, it's the entire week. It's not just a day here, a day there. It's for the entire week. But on top of that, we have all these events that we do. Over Halloween weekend, we did an event with several theme camps, and with Thanksgiving weekend, we did gifting and gratitude weekend, and New Year's was like fairly massive. It was pretty big. It was like half the size of Burning Man in a 2-day period of time, and that was impressive. And then we just keep it going.
Awesome. And in fact, you answered one of the questions that it occurred to me was, this was born out of the fact that we couldn't be on the playa last year, right? And you know how now, hopefully, everybody's back on the playa this year. Where does the life of this virtual thing live on? But it sounds like you really made it a part of the overall experience just going forward.
This is a larger question of how can, once COVID recedes, how can hybrid events happen, because people are going to go to the main event, and then there's going to, and within it, whether it's Sundance or South by Southwest, or they're all going to now forever have a virtual element, because they know that they can get millions of people to come to the virtual version, and only so many people can go to the actual event. So in the case of Burning Man, it did get canceled this year. There will be people going out there. I don't know what they're going to do for porta potties, but that's something I don't want to think about too much. But when it does come back, we're going to be cross the events. We're going to have media coming in, like live shots from the event into a virtual world in 360, and going back and forth and doing sort of a hybrid event. And the conversation of hybrid events is happening more and more now that people are going out. So
Got it. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's the question on everybody's mind is we all rushed into the online space and now we're all like, what do these things happen? All right, we have Alexa Smith for BRCvr. Good news is I was reading it, so that I had crib notes. Are you coding more interactive elements? I'm assuming it's on Allspace VR, which has its limits. Really cool project overall. Big thumbs up. But yeah, what about the interactive elements?
We are. So Altspace, I don't want to get into technical weeds here, but Altspace is very conservative with scripting and doing stuff because they're scared that they're going to take someone's avatar and throw them or do something crazy with them, or hackers and stuff. So they're more conservative than say VR chat in that respect. So within the confines of their, we've hacked the hell out of this thing. We have found every hole, and we've done a lot of stuff. We're going to try to.
They love when we hack their platform,
or at least they tell us that. I'm totally kidding, Altspace. You love it. But anyway, we're going to try to have more interactive elements, and Altspace is always adding. Altspace became the center of a Microsoft strategy for what they call mesh, which is sort of AR and VR combining together. And so they're in a high speed adding features to the platform to make it a sort of a world-class events platform. So I think a lot of that will be coming online very quickly.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. Dane, not Dane Smith, here for the line. Art direction is so impressive. What was the process like to create such a unique look, and what was the inspiration?
Thank you very much for the compliment. We had three main influences for this look. The first one was like old films or new films that make homage for old films, like Hugo from Martin Scorsese. This was one big reference for us. We also went to a lot of like scale miniature models, places where people that build very big train model sets, and try to look for old train model sets to understand how they built that at the time, like in the 40s. And also there were a lot of personal objects from families. For example, the photo album that you see in the first scene, it's my father's photo album when he graduated from high school. So we also gathered some personal objects from the scene. And we try to do everything to make something that people can recognize and feel somehow familiar from the movies and things they saw already, but also elements that were very fresh and different and personal because of our personal connection with the piece.
Fantastic. For Braden and Brian, thank you for joining. The multi-user, multi-person aspect of this, why did you choose some of the things, why did you choose this approach as opposed to like a single person solitary storytelling and things like that? You seem like you wanted to just make your lives difficult.
Well, we're glutton for punishment.
Fair enough.
So our current production actually was an adaptation of immersive theater experience that was one audience member. However, the issue with that is scalability, not only in terms of how many audience members you can bring your world and your story to, but also we don't want people to need to pay like $150 for a ticket to show up, right? So the better that you can get that audience to cast crew ratio, the more attainable it is for the audience members and the more sustainable it is for the cast and crew in terms of income, and trying to find an equilibrium there is very important to us. It can be kind of chaotic at times. Usually it's pretty streamlined though. I think only like one show I can think of really went off the rails, and but the important thing is that when you're adding more people, you also have to keep it lower than what you might otherwise, because otherwise you start to lose that personal connection that the audience gets between the cast and the other audience members. Now, our latest one, Welcome to Respite, which was one person. how we got around that is we introduced a new role, which are alters. The show deals with dissociative identity disorder, and the main audience member steps into a past memory of Alex, and the other audience members go into an invisible and inaudible role, but they can explore the environment, watch the scenes from any angle, find information which is exclusively to them, and also step in and interact at key pivotal moments in the narrative. So that's kind of how we found a little bit of a balance there by making it very personal and interactive for one person while still interesting and interactive and with unique experience for others.
Yeah, I think Braden touched on pretty much everything. I guess I'd add that we are actively looking at a number of different formats, and I think that's part of what's so exciting about BR is that no one's quite figured it out. So no one's quite figured out where is that balance, where does the monetization make sense? You know, what is the ideal audience to actor ratio, and of course that will vary from production to production. We've been going in that trajectory throughout the entirety of our existence. Is cutting things down more and more. For our first show, it was more just about getting the community together and just doing something and just bringing people together. So we had 6, 7 people in our cast, and we'd bring a ton of people in, and it was great. Which no one was making any money. So then for the show we're talking about this evening, the Krampusnacht, we had 4 members in our cast, and we had people kind of they'd go into invisible avatars when they weren't on screen, if you will, and then they could do a number of things regarding stage management, pressing buttons to make things trigger and whatnot. And then yeah, for this current show, there is only one active participant that is interacting with the actors, and we've gotten that process down to the point where the actors are actually able to manage the entirety of the process themselves and are able to handle all of the buttons themselves. So they can essentially handle the entire show autonomously and don't need a stage manager to handle anything. They are just working the show essentially as they're acting, and it's very impressive what they managed to do, including Braden here, who's actually working in our production, what they managed to do of putting on that performance and having that emotional connection while pressing all these buttons in world and making the show run.
Fantastic. Keeping on with you guys for a second, Dane had come and said, hey, huge fan of immersive experiences here. Again, we're not sure this is really Dane. Any specific shows you were inspired by to create this? And I'm going to add to it, is the next one going to involve fluffy bunnies, or are you going to still continue down these dark, deep?
I'd like to do some whimsy stuff someday, but we'll talk about that later. For me, Brian will have much more to say on this than myself. I'm based in South Dakota, which is somewhat of a, let's call it a cultural desert. So traditionally, okay, that's probably enough here, but you wouldn't be able to see immersive theater in South Dakota or the surrounding areas. Historically, it has been relegated to people in LA and Chicago, New York, London, and a few other metropolitan areas. And if you weren't in those locations, it just wasn't on the table. And watching a recording of one just isn't going to impart the experience. So my exposure prior to starting all of this was purely literary, having read about it. So for me, the big inspiration come through other people who have done things in VR. Tender Claws, the Underpresents, and Underpresents Tempest, which we've got a lot of the cast that worked on that actually are working with us, and also Double I Productions' Finding Pandora X, which premiered last year at Venice, were big inspirations for us, particularly Finding Pandora X, because they also used VR chat and kind of proved like, okay, you can use these tools. These tools are freely available. You just need to dig in and not be afraid to get your hands dirty. And with that, I will pass over to Brian, who has stuff to say.
Yeah, maybe I'll have a few things to say. On the BR side, I very much agree with Braden. Tender Claws and the Underpresents and Tempest, which is what their linear story. That was a single ticketed event that they introduced later on in the process of that game's development. That was a big inspiration. That kind of opened the floodgates for BR theater. And then, yeah, Finding Pandora X, sort of, that was the big inspiration in terms of, we can do something. We don't need to build our own platform. We don't need to build all that infrastructure. There's these social platforms that exist that allow us to tell theater. In terms of actual shows in what we call meat space, I got my start in writing, in reviewing immersive shows over in LA. So I've been to many of them, and one of our founders as well, Deirdre Lyons, she has done a number of productions with JFI Productions, including The Willows and Creep, which are some wonderful shows. But I would say for Krampusnacht specifically, the biggest inspiration, I would say, or the real life immersive that is most heavily in that vein would have to be Delusion. Delusion is a very cinematic experience. There are so many different immersives that do so many wonderful things, but in terms of taking you into a movie, I don't think anyone does it quite like Delusion. They have actors on rope lines that are, gliding across the roofs, and parts of the set get broken down. You're going from room to room, and there's well, the one from 2016, which is the first one I saw, was this old mansion, this crazy mansion in LA that was falling apart in some regards, but had so much charm. And yeah, their shows are very much taking you on an adventure, and you feel like you're going from a distinct place to place. So for the sort of grand adventure that we tried to accomplish with Krampusnacht, I would say that's probably the biggest inspiration.
Fantastic, thank you. Ricardo, what would you say, what delighted you and what frustrated you in this storytelling process for you? Beautiful crafting of this, but what's that aha moment and that moment?
I think until I have a big insight, it was the same thing, but in the beginning, when you begin to create interactive experience and experience for VR, we come from films, so we write a script and we try to make things work the same way we wrote, and never happened. And then you get frustrated a lot because everything works very well in your mind, and then we try to implement and you see the users doing, and they are wrong because they don't understand what you're thinking. And then when you realize that that's not the right framework for interactive pieces, and you have to write the experience and iterate the script while you are testing with users, and you will be writing and you will be creating the piece during the production process, then it's a joy, because then you realize that you can still have good ideas while you are making it. So like for the line, we had like 16 versions of the story while we were doing it. If you think in a film, it's like impossible to do that during the filming, right? And then every time you do it, and then you see the users testing it, and then you see that change worked, and then you have another idea, and then you can do it like increment more and more every time you learn with the users. For me, was the biggest shift from creating a piece for linear and flat films, and understanding that this is a very beautiful way to collaborate with the spectators while we're creating.
Right, fantastic, thank you. And I just want to confirm, you're on Oculus Quest, correct?
Yes, perfect.
Got
and
it.
Also on Steam VR and Oculus for PC VR.
Great. Braden and Brian, I saw that Braden, you put in the chat where people could find more about you guys and where they might be able to experience this. And then I just wanted to make sure, and then for the team for Black Rock City VR, you guys are, they find you through Altspace, or do they go to your site and like, what's
they have to go, well, they can go to our website, but you still need to set up an account on the Altspace platform. It's free to set up. A lot of the activities that we do are free to attend. but you set up an AltSpace account. We created a document on our website, brcvr.org, how to play in the digital dust. And I'll put it in the chat as well. And that is step by step exactly how you set up your account on AltSpace and you get on the platform. It's not actually that complicated, but some people like having, check this off. I did this, I did this, I did this. And so we created that. We're also going to put together some videos, but the technology is changing so quickly. Like every time we create a video, it changes. And so we have to create another one. So we have like all these new videos that we have to create because AltSpace is going through a major update.
The joys of development, technology under constant development. This question comes from anonymous attendee and was directed to Doug and Athena, but I think it's also going to be fun, Braden and Brian, because you also have actors. What did you feel were some of them? How long was the process to train artists how to create art for your platform and what software was used? But then I want you guys to answer that. And I also then want you guys to talk a little bit about how actors and people train in your environment. But let's first go to Black Rock City.
By the way, I do love the explosion of acting in the virtual space. We're seeing it in AltSpace and other places, and it's just such a great lot of. This is off topic, but a lot of in LA, a lot of actors had nowhere to go during the COVID, and the outlet for acting is just so great. So I love it. We created training videos and we created a toolkit, and in this toolkit was all the things you need to build a camp. Tents, RVs, porta potties, generators, everything we could think of, from the mundane to the hilarious. And we sort of gave that out to creators, and then they could like building blocks in usually in Blender or Maya, build it together, bring it into Unity. Put it into an environment, and then upload it from Unity into AltSpace. AltSpace, VR chat and AltSpace are Unity based, so that's sort of the flow. So we also did a modeler matchmaker content game show where we had people tell us their art, and then modelers says, "Oh, I like that one. I'll take it on," and sort of helped modelers connect with art pieces. So we're going to be doing a lot of that this year for sure.
Last year we
had, wait, you're not mute. You're not.
I know it's not doing it. Last year we had a very short period of time from when we started bringing artists onto the platform and onboarding them and teaching them how to create. And these are non-technology based artists and performers, and the camps and just that heavy lifting of getting people on the platform was really intense last year. So this year we have a little bit of a head start. We have Burning Man has been canceled, and we have a small army of people now ready to help and onboard and get more art in and answer questions. And so there's more buzz around it this year than last year.
Great, thank you. Braden and Brian, you have people acting in your environment, moderating your environment. Braden, you're stepping in. Like if somebody said, "Hey, I want to join the next one," what's the onboarding process? How do you get people trained up to do this? How to be involved in this?
All right. So we're actually very fortunate that two of our actresses came from the Underpresents, and the Underpresents was sort of the foundation of VR theater in terms of mass market, in terms of mass market availability. There were small scale things that happened at festivals prior to this, but that was kind of the best possible crucible for acting in VR, in that they were doing this as a full-time job practically for about a year, and they were using menus, they were teleporting people around, they were adjusting set pieces, and that this was all accessible to them via a radial menu that they would open up on their wrists, essentially using their controllers. So there is a definite challenge there to how do I keep the show running? How do I do what I need to do with the buttons and with the controls that are available to me, and not have that compromise the performance? And a lot of that comes down to just a relationship and a communication between the creative team and the actors. The fundamental process is very similar to what Doug was explaining for Altspace. We use Unity, and it's essentially VR chat. We just port that into VR chat. There's a few considerations, but essentially it's Unity based. But yeah, and then every production has its own considerations as well. Like I was saying with our original productions, we had a stage manager. We had a stage manager that essentially was in a crow's nest that would watch over everything above the performance space and would be controlling of all these various things. But that's another mouth you have to feed, and if you don't need it, then well, the actors can get a better share of the pie. So now in this space, they're using all of these hidden buttons that are only accessible to them. And yeah, it's challenging for the actors for sure, but it's just a matter of us being in constant communication with them and saying, okay, you need to use this button. There's no way we can get around you having to use this functionality. Where can we put it, and how can it work? And sort of how can we design that flow so it's the easiest for you to do, and it becomes as much second nature to you in the process of your performance as possible.
Got it. So all actors out there, I just want you to know, remember in your IMDb, button pushing now should be a qualification.
Very important.
In adding on to that, in addition to the multitasking, which isn't going to be necessarily a prerequisite always in virtual reality acting, but two aspects stand out in my mind as descriptors of acting in VR versus acting in meat space. And that is that it's, in a very real sense, a hybridization between puppetry, because you're puppeting this avatar. I mean, it may be synced to your hands and your head, but to get the entire thing to move realistically and appear to be alive rather than just this inanimate thing that happens to move its hands every once in a while, you have to go in front of a mirror and do some mirror work and kind of emulate some of the sort of things that happens with mask work in more traditional theater. And in addition to that, voice acting, where obviously the voice is very important in all acting, but with this, since all of the tools that you have at your disposal are your motions and your voice, you have to rely much more heavily on your voice and how you intonate and express yourself to get across emotions, which in real space you might utilize, like, some micro expressions and eye contact and things of that nature. But yeah, basically that. Learn to puppeteer a body, voice acting, and multitasking, and then you're good to go.
No problem. Ricardo, you premiered, I believe, an Oculus Quest, and part of that was the hand gestural. How much of that was because you were going to go do that on the Quest, and how much of that was integral to what you wanted to do with the story? The pulling the levers and things like that. Did one begat the other?
Actually, we were kind of lucky because even before knowing the hand tracking, we wanted to make with the controllers the interaction seem as natural as possible, because we wanted to give it to people that never tried the VR before. So we thought about the design of the devices to be very simple and familiar, like old buttons, like the clanks, the levers, everything in a way that anyone can look and relate and know how it works. And then we made the controllers in a way that the position of your hand would be similar what you would do in the physical world. So when the hand tracking technology came, we have a little bit of trouble to program it, but the hand gestures would be exactly the same as we were already doing for the controllers. And this was very nice to make people feel comfortable, because in the beginning people get very worried, like, I don't know how to play with the things, I don't know video games, and we always say, like, you do as you would do in the physical world, and it will work well, and then it happened as much as we can see in this aspect.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. For each group, if you could answer the question of going forward, what do you, as we're pushing, as we say, Altspace changing every day, all these platforms are changing. What is like the one or two big advances that you're hoping to see as you're working with these mediums you're trying to tell stories. You're, like I said, may have frustrated you last time, and you're hoping, some platform maker gets it right soon, whether it be the headset, the input method, the platform. So with that, I'll start with Doug and Athena, if you guys have some thoughts on that.
I really looking forward to a more liquid experience getting into the platform. The onboarding, I mean, like the onboarding into the platform to be smoother, to be quicker, and more. And somebody had mentioned earlier about interactivity. I think as they add more interactivity, more that you can do with people without getting them sick. We're constantly trying not to get people sick.
I want to unpack. I want to unpack that for a second, just because you may have some folks out there that are like, "What does he mean by onboarding on platform?"
Right?
Are you talking about the process of me when I put on the headset, getting into BRCvr, or into your?
I'm talking about like when you put on your Oculus headset, or taking the Oculus itself, learning the controllers, learning how to download apps, downloading those apps, and then going into the VR chat or Altspace, and then learning the controls within that world. There's just a series of steps you got to do, and it would be really great if they were streamlined in a way that would be more intuitive in a way as we go forward. Like explaining someone how to use VR chat when they get in there with the menus and is sort of daunting, and we've had it's challenging, and so I just feel that those will get more streamlined. The UX, it's a UX conversation, really, getting it more, click a button, WebXR, you click a button and it opens the thing, and you're walking around in 2D. That was just a super liquid experience. You're there. Well, I think that these VR headsets will get more streamlined as we get further down the line.
Perfect. And for those people out there, UX is user experience, or the journey that a user goes through and how they interact with their environment. Athena,
for me, I'm really excited about hybrid events and how we're going to bridge the people from the physical world to the virtual world, and getting them to communicate and to create art together and to tell stories together. Having a shared experience that location-based events have this shared experience you do with your friends. We have that in immersive social VR, where you have this shared experience with your friends, but some of your friends are going to be in the physical space and some in the virtual. And so that's something that we're really excited about bringing together this year, not this year, but next year, 2022, is those hybrid events. We're going to start experimenting with them now, but I'm very excited about seeing that happen.
Awesome. Ricardo?
On my side, we've been working a lot with Oculus Quest, and for the ones that work with VR since 2013, it's already a miracle because it works very well. But however, as developer, it's still a mobile processor, right? So it's still very hard to create beautiful content there, and there is a lot of limitations on processor power. So on the technical side, we expect to see the new versions, and we can have a good quality of image, more cinematic. Because for me, what I think it's always complicated is because people don't know how hard it is to make experience in VR, and they compare with the mediums, the things that they are seeing on the flat screen. And then if they see like an avatar or a scenario or like a place that looks a little bit like old or not so beautiful, they will compare no matter what, right? So we have to create beautiful and streamlined experience on a visual aspect, I think, to make people like don't think that VR is still too experimental. I love experimental things, but I think for the mainstream we have to be at the same level, right, of the broadcast content. And also on the like language side, I'm always looking for enhance and understand more how to include the full body and the body inside the experience. So people that create experience in VR chat, they already use a lot of like full body tracking, and this helps a lot to have like your entire body. And even when you look down and you see your legs there, it's kind of magical. So this kind of solutions will make, I think, people feel more and more present, and living in this experience will be more and more natural.
Perfect, thank you. When you were saying look down and see your legs, and I was thinking of the Black Rock City and seeing all those people with no legs. I'm like,
yes,
version 2, legs. Sorry.
Yes, yes, that's it.
Braden, Brian.
So I guess I would echo what Doug said for sure. In VR chat, we are so happy with the tools that are available to us to actually tell our story. Of course, there are things that we'd love to be able to do. One of the biggest things, I guess, just from a creative perspective, is we have 50 megabytes to work with for Quest Worlds, which is not very much. That's the size of like a large ping, but it's like or a very, very small video. We have to use our entire world. That's what we can fit. That's quite challenging, but we've managed to do quite a lot with it, and I'm really happy with the show we've managed to put together with it. But yeah, just the onboarding experience, it's just such a struggle to get people into that world. Like it's so sad when we run into someone that may not have a lot of familiarity with virtual reality, and they're doing their best to get into the show. We're doing the best to get them into the show. We have a Zoom, we have emails, they can call in. There are so many different ways, so many different resources we provide them. But sometimes the technology just won't play ball, and just a VR chat problem will arise, and they won't get our invite into our world. And then we're running on a very tight ship. And also we're contending with comfort levels. People aren't always necessarily super comfortable being in VR for a long period. So we have to run shows on a certain schedule. And if we can't get someone into the world in 5-10 minutes, we have to, for everyone else's sake and everyone else's comfort, move forward with the show. We have to reschedule them for another time. So having a better onboarding experience, and one where we can potentially assign things to these accounts and say, okay, this person has this role, so we give this person these permissions and give this person these access to these things. That would be a wonderful tool for us, because when we get these people into our world, we have to think of creative ways of how do we give them the various different experiences we're trying to give them. But yeah, just getting people into the world in a way that is understandable to a general audience would be a massive improvement.
Yes.
And I want to add increasing as the maximum amount of people in a world will increase over time from like around 50 now to 100 later. And you can be in a world with 100, 200 people. That's another dream of all these platforms too.
Indeed. I honestly, everything that everyone else has said, when I was thinking of what to say, I was going to mention what Doug mentioned. I was going to mention what Athena mentioned. I was going to mention what Ricardo mentioned. I was going to mention what Brian mentioned. But I have other stuff to mention too. Okay, so first off, in terms of onboarding and that sort of stuff, and the things that we're running up against, those of us that are using these social VR platforms, a big part of that is that we're frankly using them in ways that they never intended for. Granted, they're retroactively, trying to help us, and hopefully things get better. However, there are other people that are working on platforms for creators that are more specifically tailored for events or acting or these sort of things. And I'd anyone in the audience or anyone that's a participant, there's a lovely company called Flipside XR that we've spoken with quite a few times, that are working on creating software to make the sort of things that Brian and myself are making, that's tailored specifically to that, rather than trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. So keep an eye on that. If you're a creator, hopefully that comes to fruition. And I believe a few other companies are working on something similar. For full body embodiment, which I'm very interested in, and I know the rest of you are in different capacities, like being able to move your feet around and whatnot. Right now, the barrier of entry is kind of bonkers. It costs about $1,000 if you want to get in, and a lot of platforms don't support it because it's so unattainable. However, there's two things coming up which I have a lot to hope for. One is an affordable tracker called Slime VR, which is not the best name, but it costs like $100 total. I didn't name it, but they seem to be doing well. And then also there's indication that Oculus might be bringing them to the Quest, in which case I have to imagine that they would get the price down, and a lot of different applications would then incorporate it. And then finally, VR ubiquity and VR literacy, which I think will go hand in hand. As more people get their hands on it, they'll get more comfortable, be able to spend more time in it, and we'll have less issues getting in and out of experiences. And I think that's an inevitability, and I look forward to it.
Great. No, thank you. Yeah, exactly. The challenge in this field, and for folks that are out there in the audience, is we're working with developing technology. And some of the aspects, and Ricardo, you pointed it out, is that those out there that can pick up a camera, shoot something, edit it, go, all the tools are there. Why is it, seamless distribution on any number of platforms? The world of VR and AR certainly are very much in still the formative stages of that, both from the platforms. As I like to say, the biggest problem in VR sometimes is ergonomics. Strapping a box on your face for a long period of time is not exactly a pleasurable experience. The manufacturers are constantly working on that. The onboarding experience, again, the balkanization of where I can find something. Somebody asked where Ricardo's product, it's not just like go on the web, it's go to this store or go to that store. So all of these things are in process and being solved, and all of you are pioneers in beating up the medium and finding the cracks in alt space, pushing the platforms harder, because we all have to do that to make them move forward, right? They're not going to magically move forward. It's going to be the demand of creators. It's going to be the demand of the audience that does that. We have very few minutes here, but I'm going to do a lightning round of last thoughts. I'll start with Ricardo, and we're just going to move it through. But your closing thoughts on your content, the medium, whatever, but closing thoughts.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I love everyone's work here. I was at Burning Man last year because I was alone at home and during the quarantine here in Brazil, and it was like a blast. I did last week your experience, Brandon and Brian, and I love it as well. And I think what we need more now is to have this industry and this ecosystem growing more and more, and talks like that, and having like a stamp like PGA believing in this industry is what we need now to create, because there are a lot of talented people creating good things, and the public is growing. We just have to have like fuel to continue, and things will happen. Okay, I hope.
Awesome, fantastic. Athena and Doug.
COVID gave VR a powerful reason to exist and show that VR was a great medium. And now I'm hopeful that VR can still be in its reason to exist in the post-COVID era. I want to see VR be another element in the mix and not just be a thing that happened for COVID and then receded. So it's, it's such a fun, really great platform for doing creativity and film and interactivity. So I'm always looking for how is VR going to keep going into its next post-COVID phase. So that's rattling around in my head.
Yeah.
For me, I actually want to answer one of the questions that somebody asked. How is BRCvr going to inform art or change Burning Man in the future? And this is where I see VR also going, is how does it inform the physical space? We had an artist, Arthur Momomani, who's an architect, and he built this beautiful piece, and he was planning on building it at Burning Man for 2020, but he couldn't. And he was one of the first art pieces we brought into BRCvr. And we put it in, he goes in, he's flying around the piece, and all of a sudden he realizes some engineering flaws that would have had to have been fixed on site in his build that now he can fix in the model. And now this is informing all of his art. And he told all of his clients to get VR headsets and that he wasn't going to design anything without doing a walkthrough with his clients. We have modelers who had no clue how to do modeling, but we gave them the tools and we did as much teaching as we could, and we connected them on Discord servers and Slack and you name it. If there's a way of connecting people, we did it, Facebook, Instagram. And now we have people that are making a living building worlds, building models that they never did before, but because they wanted to get their art into BRCvr, they figured it out. They used the tools that we gave them. And now they're like, oh my God, somebody wants to hire me to do this thing. And I built this other thing for this other person. Like, we created this whole air of possibility for people that might otherwise not have had possibility. And we empowered them that the technology and the virtual isn't scary. It's just a lot of steps.
A lot of steps. I like that.
It's a lot of steps. It's just a lot of steps. That's all it is. That's why we have How to Play in the Digital Dust. We have this document. I put it in the chat. And if you go to it and you scroll through it, you're like, yeah, this is ridiculous. It's a lot of steps. There'll be streamlining that'll happen. Like Doug said, it's coming. But right now, because it's nascent and it's, it's technology people that have been able to get into it, it's no big deal. But when you're used to this streamlined user experience that most of our personal computers and our cell phones have, that is not what you have in VR. And you have to build your avatar. And everybody builds their avatar a little differently. And some places have stores and some places don't. Then you have to build your world. And there's kit items, but then there's this other thing you want. And then you got to go figure out how to, there's like steps. So it's just a lot of steps. That's all.
A lot of steps. And part two, legs.
Part two, legs. We have legs. No, we have legs. We don't have legs all the time. We have an interactable that is legs. So if you go to an ice skating rink or a roller rink or a couple of places, you can like click on legs and then you have legs and you can skate around. But the walking legs, that's going to take a little bit of time. So steps and time.
Perfect. Love it. Braden, Brian, I'll let you can figure out which one goes first.
You go first.
Okay, I'll go first. All right, I'd like to reiterate what Ricardo said. I'm a big fan of both of your projects. I've been to them each. The line was awesome. BRCvr was fantastic. Great work, and thank you to all involved in putting this panel together and the Innovation Award in general. I think that is going to empower a lot of creators to push forward and get validation. So thank you so much for doing that. That's all I really got. Thanks
awesome.
all.
Brian?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on the panel. This has been a wonderful experience. I would just say I'm very, very excited. I've been an immersive fan for the last 5 or 6 years now, and seeing my first immersive was a magical experience that almost felt like I'd stepped into a dream. And it's a wonderful world and a wonderful industry, but unfortunately, historically, it's an industry only available to a very small percentage of the world population. If you're near a select few major population centers. But now, well, VR isn't free; it's getting cheaper. But we hope with this to make those wonderful magical experiences available to the world and to give the world access and that VR and the opportunities afforded to us by digital production versus all of the challenges that arise from producing an in-person immersive with the venue costs and insurance and all of those incredible things which make most of these productions cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, not only does the world have access to the shows, but these tools and the availability of them and the access to things like the asset store, which provide so much pre-existing content for you to use in your projects, allows for the world to produce content and for us hopefully to be exposed to a world of creators that we would not be able to otherwise.
Well said. Well said. I'd like to thank all of you. Again, great projects. Keep on creating. keep on growing. Thanks to the audience for coming and joining and spending some time with us. On behalf of the Producers Guild and the New Media Council, I'm John Canning. I'd like to say thank you and have a wonderful day, evening, morning, wherever you are. Thank you.